Let me continue very quickly. We talked about stroking the lamp the right way. To do that with our mind, we talked about auto-conditioning, affirmations, I can, I will, I am. There are some people out here who are teaching, just do away with the I can and the I will. Go right to the I am. You know what I mean? And I suppose that sounds good. I've been to a lot of seminars where they say things like, how much money do you want to earn next year? And you put, say, go ahead and expand it, you know, be generous with yourself. And you put 60,000, and they'll say, okay, now let's double that. And then you just got to start, if you want to make 120,000, you got to say, I'm making 120,000. Well, I just don't think the mind will lie to itself long enough to accomplish that. I do think, though, that you have to adjust to the possibility of making 120,000 if you've never made that much before, and so I can or we can is appropriate. And then the I will, once you develop some ability, some habits, some skills and what have you, I will become a millionaire, and then I am or we are a millionaire. These are affirmations. By the way, I believe we have focused over here a sheet on affirmations. A few things I'd like to just go over with you. And again, you can call in or write in, and we will send you these along with something we used in the last show. But these are on affirmations. I don't want to go over all of them, but the first one, we cannot be free to choose, to share or to grow until we become truly conscious of what we've been thinking and saying, so we can adjust our thoughts and verbiage and perceptions toward a more favorable existence. Does that make sense? We are a product of the words we have employed. Wrong words, wrong result. Okay? Once we really accept and believe that something is possible, which we can do with the affirmation, we can, I can. Once we really accept and believe that something is possible, it becomes probable. Belief stimulates action, and we are suddenly on a path to expansion. Each affirmation is a choice, an exercise of free will. Isn't that exciting? Each affirmation is a choice, an exercise of free will, and a commitment, all of which recognize the capacities that are ours, capacities now that are ours, the authorities that must be accepted, and the responsibilities that have to be assumed. You can write your book of life instead of just reading it. See, mostly, for the most part, we read our book of life. We live by rote, out of previous conditioning, previous perception, look back and check to see how we're doing, and oftentimes disappointed. We can change that. If we want a better world, we must tell better stories to ourselves and to others. We've heard so often it's easier said than done. You know, you have an idea and people say, well, it's easier said than done. Yeah, but it doesn't get done until it's said. We've got to remember that. It doesn't get done until it's said. That's the first step. And not only, I know, I believe it was Bishop Tutu had made some comment the other day in an interview I saw. He said that words can describe, but more importantly, they can create. More importantly, they can create. Success doesn't come the way you think, it comes from the way you think. Interesting. Watch that one. Right thoughts for and toward the future are the best explanations or apologies for the wrong ones in the past. The best evidence of regret for them that we can offer or the world receive. Anyway, a little bit about affirmations. It's something that we say over and over and over because it's really what we really want. We do have to be careful in our languaging. Once I had peaked out at #1 field counselor in the United States, we talked about that last week, I thought, wow, that's incredible. Maybe I can stop stuttering. Because I've been a stutterer since I was 6 years old, and it really has impinged upon my life in many, many ways. And this was in '57, and I thought, wow, I can stop stuttering. I can stop stuttering. That was my next intention. And I said that I can't tell you how many times, and it wasn't getting a bit better. In fact, it seemed like maybe a little bit more frequent, a little more severe. And it was confusing, and so I changed it to I will. I will stop stuttering. And it really did get worse. And one day, I was driving up University Avenue in San Diego, California. I remember it clearly. And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I been doing? Because what had my mind heard over and over and over? Stutter, 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 stutter. In other words, I was conditioning myself almost. And so I thought, well, how can I rephrase that? How can I lighten that up? And so I changed it that I can speak clearly and crisply without hesitation or impediment. I can speak clearly and crisply without hesitation or impediments. For some reason, I could say that without getting bound up. And so I said that over and over and over, and then I will, and I do to some level even now. Occasionally, I still regress. For some reason, it's deeply embedded in me. And this may come up later on. But what did I just do? I just made an affirmation. See what I mean? I did that just so that we can understand that that's how tricky the mind is. It grasps the way things are. We can't continue in this without talking about prayer. This is not a religious show. That's not the intention. And yet, a lot of people put a lot of weight on prayer. And I think there's a way of praying, I'm certain of it, where you can get incredible results. Okay? This doesn't fly in the face of anybody's belief systems or whatever, but if you're going to pray, I got some suggestions. That a prayer should have, perhaps ideally, 4 parts to it. The first part of a prayer is where you acknowledge and celebrate your capacities. Acknowledge and celebrate. Take a moment to acknowledge and celebrate capacities. The fact that you can see and hear and feel and smell and taste and move and walk and run and wow, you know, and then you can think, you can remember, you can imagine, you can make choices and decisions. That's all wow stuff. Yeah, take a moment to acknowledge and celebrate your capacities. The second part of the prayer was to accept the authority that's implied in them. In other words, you've been given the capacity to reason, to be rational, to think, to evaluate, to make choices. And so that you have to accept the authority that's implied in that. Accept the authority that you have. Because all of this certainly would imply that you were given that as a gift. You have the authority to make choices. And then the third thing is to assume responsibility for the result. In other words, don't ask for something nearly as much as committing to doing it. Okay? In other words, assume the responsibility. Okay, that would be one way of doing that. Okay. These are all first party singular. There is another system that we want to get to fairly quickly here, and that is confirmations. Now, this is all first party singular. Confirmations is just another pathway into the subconscious mind, and it's a second party directory. Second party. So the affirmations are first party, the confirmations is second party. And what I mean by that is we have the right, if we're committed to a certain intention, a goal, a dream, a purpose, to align the people in our lives to support us in that. You know, to say, you know, this is what I want to achieve, and what I would like you to do is to support me verbally in doing that, to applaud my every effort, to encourage me, and to give me that, okay? In other words, if your affirmation, for example, going back to my first one, that I can be the #1 field counselor in the United States, if everyone in my life was saying, you can be the #1 field counselor in the United States, can you see how that strengthens? Yeah, there's no question about it. We don't get confirmed nearly enough, you know. In fact, I was brought up in an era where there was no confirmation from parents. None. I mean, my father never gave me a hug and said, good job. Never. Never told I was smart or, you know, none of that. Because back in those days, they thought if you did that to a kid, he'd get a big head. So we all ended up with no head. You know, we had no idea, you know, easily managed, you know, directed. But yeah, so in fact, I remember the only time I can remember really getting confirmed as a young kid was at the county fair. You know that game roll where you throw baseballs and all that stuff? It was a guy behind one of those counters who said, hey kid, you look like a winner, come on over. And he took all my money. Yeah, he took all my money. So now, you know, for a long time, a lot of people are to the state where someone confirms them. You wonder, well, what are they up to? What do they want? So you have to solicit people in your life to confirm you, that second party delivery. The good news is, though, that the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between a real situation and a synthetic one. And so if you can't get the people to really support you and say the things you need them to say that are in concert with your affirmations, then you make your own cassette tape. is you can actually sit down, change your first-party affirmations to second-party confirmations and read them into a tape recorder, and then listen to them frequently in the car, when you're getting ready in the morning, when you go to bed. Just have that second-party voice saying, you can, you will. Terribly important. This probably is the time to mention the subliminal tapes. I took a stand a long time ago, and I still stand firmly on it, that I wouldn't make a major investment if you think you're going to get dramatic results with subliminal tapes. You've heard of those. These multiple messages that come to you through the nature sounds and the music that's going to change your life. I was always suspicious of that. Some years ago, I went to the University of Kansas, I believe it is. It has one of the leading audio departments in the world. And I went there to get my ears examined, but I really wanted to ask them, what do you guys think about subliminal tapes? And they looked at me like, hey, get real. And by the way, they've been supported by the Department of Health in Washington, who have officially said, they are placebic at best. Now, certainly there's value in them in this regard. When you buy a subliminal tape, what have you just done? You made an affirmation. You've committed yourself to some result, and you may get some, Or every time you take the cassette and put it in the machine and turn it on, what have you done? It's an affirmation, That's a contribution to your welfare, so you may get some benefit from that. And while the tape is playing, perhaps maybe you've got some supportive thoughts in that. And so there's a placebic impact from them, but I wouldn't go to the bank on, these other ones. One of the things, too, that we noticed in the very beginning was that most of them were affirmation tapes. As they were saying, I am, for example, if I said to Tracy, I've got a good eye and a fine mind and a bright future. I'm enthusiastic, committed, and dedicated, and I know I'm going places. I'm going to be successful, and money will flow to me and as I need it, And what does that do for you? Not a lot. You might say, well, good for you, Catch me on the way down, buddy, or something, Now, the thing is, if I said, on the other hand, Tracy, this is the second encounter, I think, isn't it? Second time we've crossed paths. I was impressed the first time, and doubly so this time. You obviously got a good eye, a fine mind. Haven't you committed yourself to a career, too? No, don't you? You have a degree, and you've committed yourself to a special field, and you're going places. I can see that the presentation you make to the world is one that's going to be welcomed with open arms. You're destined for greatness. How does that feel? Yeah, so it's different, isn't it? It's a different feel. That's a confirmation. See what I mean? And so we need both. We need both, or certainly can benefit from both. Confirmations. Then there's proclamations. It's another verbal way of communicating to the subconscious mind. Proclamations. And a proclamation is a written statement in third party. In third party. In other words, what I suggest you do is to take a sheet of paper, and whatever your affirmations are, whatever dreams you have, no matter what it is you aspire to, then write it as being accomplished up here. In other words, write it in third party. Now, I initially did this because of a magazine article that I was gratified by in Dallas, Texas in 1972. Came home from work one day, and my wife was gracious enough to invite me to sit comfortably in the living room while she made a sandwich. A little unusual. It wasn't our style to do that. And as she left the room, she said, oh, by the way, the Dallas Magazine is in if you want to take a look at it. And cool. And so I kicked my feet up onto the coffee table and began to peruse the magazine. There were other members of the staff that had come to see how I was going to react or respond, because as I was turning the pages of the magazine, all of a sudden, I turned and there was a picture of me, and my name, and a great article. And what a warm feeling by reading how cool I was. I had no idea that it was going to come out. But it was comforting and exciting and inspiring. And I remember the feeling of it. It was kind of neat. Well, I guess it was maybe several weeks later. I was in Austin, Texas. And the manager there said, would you do me a favor? I said, what's that? Would you get rid of this gal for us? Her name is Charmaine. and she's not fitting in, and I just can't bring myself to getting rid of her. I said, sure, I don't have any trouble doing that kind of stuff, because I figured, hey, well, I can do it in such a way where it's to their best interest, you know. And so we made the appointment, and she walked into the office, hadn't even crossed the threshold. She had tears in her eyes, and she says, I know what you're going to do, don't do it. I said, what do you mean, Charmaine? She says, you're going to fire me. I said, well, we can't. We didn't hire you. You're an independent contractor. And she said, well, you know what I mean. You're going to get rid of me. And she says, please don't. I love this. I know I don't fit in. I know I'm not getting it done, but there's something here. I know it, you know. And here I'm trapped. I told Gary I'd get rid of her, and here she wants to stay. And so I remembered this feeling that I got when I read that magazine article. So I said, I'll tell you what. Let's write, and I composed the word proclamation. And she said, what's that? And I told her. And so what we did, we wrote a thing. It was about Charmaine Sullivan, Ms. Sullivan, Charlie, some of her friends call her Charlie, she and her. And that was all the third-party nouns and pronouns that we could use, and that's what the article was about. And I asked her to read it over and over again, and every time she read it, make a little tally mark on a sheet of paper, fill it with tallies, and show it to Gary. And then keep doing that, and then I think everything would work out, because I didn't think she'd do it. You know what I mean? I figured, give her a chance. She did, probably something good to come out of it. Didn't hear any more about it. Left the city, had cities all over, offices all over the country, so we were traveling. Several months later, 3-4 months, I had occasion to be back in the city again for a promotion party. We were actually promoting Gary to division, and even though he couldn't fire people. And we brought in another branch manager, and they had like a party and a banquet, and they had a head table, and there was this girl up there that looked familiar, and it was Charmaine. And she got promoted that evening to staff advisor, and lots of tears. Now, those things that can be exciting, you know. And she told about the proclamation and how she had dressed it up and continued and intended to continue with it. Well, I never saw her again. 8 years later, I was in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I don't know how she found me. I got a letter from her. She'd still been doing it. Had graduated, was a practicing radiologist, has met this young intern. They were going to be married, couldn't be happier, and she had attributed it to the proclamations. That's just one of the pathways. We hadn't even talked about affirmations and confirmations. And so you use the three of them. If you really, really want something, it can make a difference. It has to. There is no way that it cannot. Then you have the visual pathways. Imagination. They call it an imaging process, I-M-A-G-I-N-G. That's imaging. Years ago, I gave credit to a Dr. Mark Victor Hansen, and then later I heard that it might have been Walt Disney that came up with the term Imagineering. Nice word. Engineering the future with your imagination. Imagineering. The Russians were incredible with this. The exact word in English for what they had more or less pioneered was anthropomaximology. That's a fun word. I thought I'd throw that in for you. Anthropomaximology. Anthropomaximology. And it's no big deal. It's just the study, the study of the maximization of the human entity. Okay? And they did it through visioning. And that was, you remember hearing about it in sports. They spent as much time working out in their mind, you know, jumping the bar, lifting the weight, running the course, swimming the route, you know, this type of thing, as they did in the actual gym. And boy, they surged ahead until we picked up on the technology and began to get our athletes to do the same thing. Greg Louganis said that for every dive he did physically, he probably did hundreds in his mind. The timing, everything. And he was as near perfection, I guess, as one can get. As well as being heroic, be able to take the abuse of the sport. The word I like to use is telesthesia. If you'd write that down, telesthesia. T-E-L-E-S-T-H-E-S-I-A. It's a nice word, telesthesia. It's in the dictionary. To properly define telesthesia, I'd have to use the word nostalgia probably. As if I say the word nostalgia, where does the mind go? Forward or backward? Backward. And does it go to the good, warm, and fuzzy things, or to the hateful, spiteful, and dirty things? Good, warm, fuzzy stuff. And how vivid can a nostalgic experience be? I mean, yeah, sometimes you can smell fragrances, feel textures, hear sounds. I mean, it's really vivid. Well, telesthesia is nostalgia for the future. We have the capacity, with a little bit of practice, to move forward in our minds and celebrate accomplishment. Typically, what do we do when we go forward in our minds? We wonder, we wish, we want, we worry. Okay? This is different. This is moving forward in a period of time and celebrating. For example, I've heard it said that if you want a new car, you get a picture of the car and put it up on the fridge. I'm sure you've heard that kind of stuff. And you put it in the bathroom, and, you know, right? And there's no question that it helps keep you focused and what have you. But with telesthesia, what you'd have to do is to go down and drive the car. Frequently, if you could. But go down and drive the car, and while there, plug in to all the senses. Now, what does the seats, you know, smell like? What does it sound like when you turn on the engine? What does it feel like when you move forward in first gear? What is, you know what I mean? All these things that, you know, get it all absorbed into your mind so that you can spend a little bit of time every day imagining having it and enjoying it. Okay? Now, can you see what that might do to the subconscious mind? It begins to take it on as a status quo issue. Now, as it begins to buy in, because it doesn't know the difference between real and synthetic, and so it begins to buy into that, certainly reducing its resistances to its accomplishment. See what I'm saying? And you complement that with, you know, affirmations and confirmations and proclamations, plus a little telesthesia. Of all these things, by the way, of all these things, I really tend to feel that this is the most important. This is the most important. I have too many people in my life who have achieved extraordinary things who attest to this as being the thing that made the difference. Young Jody Talal, a young fellow that we recruited years ago from the street kid. Today he's worth millions and millions of dollars. And I saw him working with this, and I think that every day of his life he's probably devoted at least a half hour to what some people might call meditating. And that's what he would do. He would be clear on what it was he wanted. And these things manifested in things like, you know, gosh, Corniche convertibles, that's Rolls-Royce, you know, $3.5 million estate, you name it. This kid had it. And it started working for him as a young man. When he was just a kid, he made a list that was quite extraordinary and had it all before he was 21. And he attributed it primarily to this, although he did all of them. But this imaging or imagineering, this telesthesia is a powerful, powerful force. Some time ago, there was a friend of mine called a man in Phoenix, Arizona. And while I was on the phone, it was like a three-way. And he asked him, he said, by the way, what do you attribute your success to? And this guy was evidently worth millions and millions. And there was this long pause, and I think he was trying to give us a genuine answer. And he said, well, I think very probably it's because I really seem to picture the result clearly in my mind. Fascinating thing happened about this. I was in Pennsylvania some years ago, and I mentioned this. There was a young stockbroker who was there, and when he heard about this, he went, oh, jeez. He threw this pin up in the air, and it came down, and I said, well, what's that about? He said, you mean everybody doesn't do this? He said, I've been recruiting and training people for years, and no one's ever been able to accomplish what I accomplished, and I can't figure out why. I thought they were doing that. So I would say, start doing that. Telesthesia, that's the key. And someday, when everything's working, people wonder where you get all your self-confidence. They won't understand. Wasn't that at all, was it? Okay, thank you.